If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
In the tunnel. In the tunnel. In the tunnel. You're listening to In the Tunnel.
Hello and welcome to In the Tunnel, episode number 123. We'll just casually ignore the little bit of hiatus we had, and
for good reason.
Yeah.
I mean, have we had one since you were in town? I think so.
Yeah.
I think it was like the start of football season, but my fiance and I bought a house, so everything kind of goes on hold.
Yeah,
Kind of hard to
exactly.
use microphones when they were packed. And now I'm in my own office, so now we have a place to record.
Yeah, so let's talk NBA trade deadline to start.
Yes. Completely ignore everything that's happened in the last number of months and just go straight towards what happened yesterday. The NBA trade deadline. Big stars moved. A lot of them moved before yesterday, but
Oh yeah.
tons of action yesterday. Some of the guys who were drafted, who everybody thought was going to be a star and then flamed out, were exchanged for each other. Other times, head-scratching moves. The big one, obviously, unless you've been under a rock in terms of NBA news, was Luka Doncic being traded from the Mavericks to the Lakers for Anthony Davis.
Yeah. I
The
gotta say,
thing
like,
with
even for somebody who doesn't follow a lot of basketball, like, that was a giant shock.
yeah, a lot has been made of it. We won't get into the weight part of it. We won't get into the perception part of it. I guess we can touch on the fact that the rumor also amongst those other two things was that Doncic was like one of the most technical foul called players in the NBA for a few years. They
Yeah.
were kind of getting tired of that level of aggression because it probably cost them some close games. Nothing that really impacts this year,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess behind closed doors, things were not great. The GM for Dallas, and I read before we recorded tonight, also been very worried about his safety because the Dallas community not a big fan of this.
Yeah.
They traded a guy who was their franchise player who had accomplished so much already before his prime years, and they did it for not a huge haul back. Anthony Davis is a great player, but he's
Definitely.
injury prone and he doesn't return the same value. And
Definitely, I agree.
Dallas didn't really milk any of the Lakers picks either. They got one first rounder, and the Lakers don't have a ton of picks to give, but you would think for a player like Luka Doncic, they would have gotten all of them.
Uh-huh.
So this one's weird. To me, at the same time, I don't think that either team really wins this trade.
I I agree. I don't think that it's won necessarily by either team, especially not at the current moment.
I just look at it like the Lakers get stronger for now in offensive sense, but Anthony Davis was by far their best defensive player. LeBron will always be a good defender as long as he's playing, but I don't really know what keeps them above average defensively now.
Hmm.
They get a lot weaker on the defensive end, and the Mavericks get better in terms of they get better scoring and better rebounding, but they also lack really much depth. So
I mean,
I don't know. The Lakers definitely don't win this, in my opinion, because um, at least not right now, because I think that this is more of a they can win it down the road. LeBron probably is not interested in staying with the Lakers long term.
oh yeah,
If he does, they basically seamlessly transition into a second phase of the franchise once LeBron does decide to hang them up. That could be after this year, it could be 3 years away, but
uh-huh.
they don't have to worry about it. The Mavericks, the West is just there's too many different teams competing for contention status, and the Mavericks didn't have a big three before, and they don't have one now. Kyrie
No,
and AD is going to be fine, but both of those guys are going to sit out games.
yep.
I don't know. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I mean, just how like unexpected, I guess this trade was kind of ridiculous to see like everyone's reaction. But I agree. Like right now, there's no winner. I'll say. I will say like probably for Dallas fans, like again, like you basically traded away their franchise player.
Yeah, their
Um,
GM should be worried. I don't think that death threats are appropriate by any
no,
means,
oh heck no, it's a game, man.
but
Like,
like and also I'm gonna say this without any qualified research. The rumor is, or not rumor, the fact is the Mavericks GM 10 years ago was a brand representative with Nike who was trying to get Steph Curry to sign a shoe deal.
uh-huh.
And he botched it so hard that Steph ended up at Under Armour
Yeah.
before Under Armour was really big at basketball.
Uh-huh.
Now, how 10 years later somebody who was failing at Nike ends up in a position of overseeing an NBA roster kind of behooves me, but I guess nobody thought, hey, maybe this is not the right person to do it. Also, people who are like, oh, this was Mark Cuban's fault, despite the fact that he sold his like all of his majority share last year. Um,
Yeah.
it's also not a good look that like in 2020, Mark Cuban is on the record of saying like if it came down to if I could have Luka on the Mavericks or trade him and keep my wife, I would keep Luka on the Mavericks and I would file divorce papers. So like it's out there in public belief as to what high-ranking Mavericks executives thought of the idea to trade him. So the
Yeah.
one guy who the GM must have really hated him.
Yeah. I mean,
Like he apparently um went to the board of the committee board and presented the idea of trading Doncic and everybody laughed at him. And he still did it.
we're
How
all
he
laughing at him, I
still
think.
has a job.
uh, I mean, again, like,
Um,
I really think, like, regardless of the situation, public perception is really tough to beat here.
being in a GM role is very tough because it's the one profession. I guess it's similar in if you ever decide to quit your job, but it's the one profession where like once you make your decision, once the paperwork is signed, there is no going back on it.
Yep.
You trade a guy to the Lakers, there is no after 12 hours, I've changed my mind, tear up the paperwork. Once the guy's gone, he's gone.
Yep.
And you can't change how people think of you because of the decisions that you make.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes it a tough business, and that's why a lot of people say that they could do it better, but probably couldn't.
Definitely.
The other big star, Jimmy Butler, went to the Warriors, sending Andrew Wiggins, Davion Mitchell, Kyle Anderson, and a first-round pick to Miami. And some other players shuffled around Utah and Toronto in the same deal. I'll let you start with your thoughts on what this actually was, because I have my own thoughts on it, and I even told coworkers
I mean,
what I thought before it happened.
when I looked at that, I was like, okay, how much does this benefit?
So Jimmy Butler is currently 35 years old.
Yeah,
If you keep track
exactly.
of the Warriors, Steph is 30, I want to say same age, because he played
Yeah,
more
I,
college years.
I think so.
Draymond was a 4-year college guy. He's the same age.
Yeah,
So you now have a core where you didn't want to keep Klay Thompson and pay him money, but you essentially got older.
yeah, definitely. And that's my thing, right? It's like I don't know how good that is. Like 35 is not young in the NBA anymore, right? Like
It's one of the more physically taxing games. Um,
so that's why I'm saying it's like when I looked at that, I was like, okay, what does this do? Like you have an old player. Okay, they could probably eke out for you like one or two good seasons here or there, and then be like, okay, average at best. I think because like
what do you think of their title contention
no,
chances? What did you think of them before?
still no.
Okay. So I'm in the same boat as you with that. I think that, you know, the Warriors have been able to build such a huge international fan base through the marketing of Steph Curry and their dynastic run.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, but essentially starting in 2014, we're like 11 years into that tenure. Um, 4 titles is a lot,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
getting and 5 finals appearances. So I don't understand what the Warriors really are pushing for here as a franchise.
And
I
that's
think
why I
this is like
said
their last gasp
yeah, but
for contention, but
that's why
like
I said
they
like when I saw this trade, I was like, what is it gonna do? Like I didn't think they were really like postseason contenders to begin with,
right.
and
I, I think they're a team that now with Butler could win a series,
yeah,
but
sure,
health is too much of an issue to say that they can get to the conference finals.
yep,
I don't think that they have it in them, and I think that the West is way too strong with deeper teams. Um, I think that for me, if I was a Warriors fan, this would have been the year to be like, Clay is gone. We're now playing with house money. We've had our good run. The window's obviously closing. We still have Steph. We still have Draymond. We have legends in the building. And let's just let them ride off into the sunset. And we'll keep our assets because they're one of the teams that, through all their building, never really had to trade away tons of assets
yep,
because of their building through the draft. Um, so they were primed to rebuild now in transition into the next era and let their superstars just kind of ease into retirement. Now it's kind of like they didn't trade a lot of picks, but I don't understand. This now takes your draft picks from in the teens to in the 20s, and You get less quality players there.
Uh-huh.
You're not competing for a title. They signed Jimmy Butler to a 2-year, $112 million extension after the trade. So they're really banking on that they're going to get something out of this, and I don't know what they think that is because it doesn't seem to be realistic.
Yeah. Again, like I don't really think it pushes the needle that far for their team. Like you said, maybe they win one series, but like in the grand scheme of things, that's not good enough.
Right. So let's see how you like Zach LaVine going to Sacramento with a bunch of picks. Some of them pick swaps, some of them actual picks going to Sacramento in a 3-team deal where Chicago was involved. Chicago essentially just got role players, nothing fancy there. But the third team was De'Aaron Fox going to San Antonio. So now San Antonio is interesting because they have Wembanyama. They put CP3 there to help with the mentorship. But now nobody's expecting playoffs out of them, but they're suddenly building a decent lineup. They have Harrison Barnes at their forward. Um, they have De'Aaron Fox at their other guard. All of a sudden, they're a team that has 4 very competent starters.
Yeah.
Uh, Chris Paul's probably not going to be around for much longer, but we say that. We've been
We say
saying
that a
that for
lot.
5 years now.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. I I guess I like that Sacramento retooled by getting Levine instead of uh
Yeah.
selling Fox and going straight into starting over again. And then they put Levine with DeRozan like they did in Chicago, which didn't work there, but I guess Sacramento's got better pieces,
Hmm.
younger pieces. Um I don't know. This is interesting.
Yeah, I think at least this trade is a lot more interesting to look at, like in terms of what's been acquired and given.
Also the fact that Sacramento landed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks
Yep.
along with Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
But yet somehow Chicago got 1 pick for selling.
I know.
So Sacramento's the big winner here. I had no idea they got that many picks out of this.
Yeah.
And
I
then
mean,
go ahead.
ridiculous.
And then there's a bunch of other ones, but the one last one that I really want to touch on uh is what the hell the Milwaukee Bucks are doing. Um when the Bucks won a title a few years ago, it was predicated on very stout defense,
And
and being able to outscore your bad offense or be due to that defense.
mhm.
Now, what has happened ever since Doc Rivers took over from the team, basically, they had a better coach and brought Doc Rivers in a year or two ago as a consultant. And ever since that kind of uprising that led to the firing of the other guy and Doc Rivers took over, seemingly has become the slow death of the Milwaukee Bucks.
Mhm.
So they
I would agree.
traded this week for Kevin Porter Jr., who has a very sketchy off the court life as it is. But he's not a good defender. He'll get you points, but he's a turnstile.
Uh-huh.
Now, if you really want to talk about turnstiles, it's Kyle Kuzma. So the Wizards have been horrible, but the biggest eyesore on the Wizards is Kuzma, who's been taking 20 plus shots a game, more or less, all season. And Kuzma, they actually had a deal in place last year to trade him for 2 first round picks.
Mhm.
So to tell you how bad he has been this year, they didn't get any first round picks for him. So, I think Kuzma's a guy who he really has no desire to play defense and seems to be very delusional. He seems to think that he's been helping the Wizards maintain relevancy and that it would have been a lot worse if he was gone. Um,
We'll see, but I doubt
they've
it.
won 3 straight games since they basically started phasing him out.
Exactly.
So now the Bucks have turned into a team that this is tough because I really, if they get the best out of this trade, I still don't know who they stop because they've traded all semblance of defense for offense. Giannis is their only defender. Chris Middleton is gone to DC in that trade. Drew Holiday has been with the Celtics for a couple of years now. Damian Lillard doesn't defend for shit. And Brook Lopez is 36 years old, and he was never really that mobile to begin with. So where the defense comes from now, I really don't know. So
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. Milwaukee seemingly is mortgaging their future for a whole lot of nothing.
yeah. I mean, again, like when I see that, I'm just like, all right, this team is just continually going down the drain. We need one of those, I guess.
Every conference needs a few idiots, and Milwaukee's the idiot in the East.
Yep. All right, let's talk about the other NBA topic we have, which is the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, or I guess in this instance we could say New Jersey Nets. But
Fair.
this one is more local news. But as I texted to Sean a while ago, I said we should put this one on our list because of we're both from New Jersey.
Yeah.
We both grew up at a time where we were in elementary school, middle school, when the Nets traded for Vince Carter and basically revived an organization that the front office was struggling with.
Oh yeah.
They were on the other side of their finals runs, but they were relatively cheap. They drafted and traded Kyle Korver for money that they later used for office supplies. No, but that's real.
Yeah, I know.
But the one aggressive move that they made was they traded, and I don't know if you remember this, in I think 2004-05, Jason Kidd was on like a major injury.
Yep.
It was literally just Richard Jefferson out there.
Yep.
And they were horrible.
Oh yeah.
And out of nowhere, they made a trade before Jason Kidd even came back to grab Vince Carter. And I think at the time I was like, why now? Like, I don't hate it, but like, what does this do without Jason Kidd?
Yep.
But Vince Carter kind of brought a spark back to the Nets.
Yep.
And that year, partly because of the injuries and they ended up as the 8th seed. They got smoked and swept by the ultimate champion Heat with Wade and Shaq. But I think
Did I think that was gonna happen though because of the kid injury? No.
No. But we saw a few years of thinking that back then big threes was very uncommon compared to now.
Mm-hmm.
So when you had Kid Carter and Jefferson, we really thought that there was a chance that maybe not winning a championship, but that they could beat anybody to get back to the finals.
Mm-hmm.
They unfortunately never even got to a conference finals. They hit the second round a few times, but this year the Nets retired Vince Carter's number. And I think to a lot of NBA fans that aren't from our neck of the woods, they say, well, Vince Carter is nothing on the Nets versus what he was to the Raptors. And I think relatively that's fair, but I think Vince played a lot of his prime years in New Jersey too. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess the question here is, what do you think of the fact that the Nets retire his number? Because Toronto retired it earlier this year, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
okay.
Watching some highlights, I think the Nets meant something to Vince.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, if you're, like, I do think that even though, like, we didn't have, like, the all the way run, he was a core part of the team for a good while. And
Only there, I think, like 6 years, but
yeah, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I mean, I guess, like, it, at the end of the day, like, okay, fine. Those 6 years were pretty good, not gonna lie. Like, I mean, comparatively to what we probably would have been.
and comparatively to what the Nets as an organization have been,
Yeah, so those 6 years were fun. I mean, going to games when I was a young kid and Vince Carter was playing, it was a lot of fun.
it was a lot more
I've had
fun
a
than when he wasn't.
had a signed basketball for authentic with the certificate and everything
From
from
Vince.
him. Yeah,
Shit, I didn't know that.
yeah,
Yeah, and Vince was like a very quality person. You never ever heard a bad thing about
yeah.
him.
So
And
like I'm fine with it. I mean, like at the end of the day, like did he have like amazing he didn't have like amazing contributions on the court for a long time because he was with us for like 6 or 7 years or something, right?
mhm.
But he definitely was definitely it definitely was a class act, at least in the public. Like you
The
didn't
other
really
aspect, sorry to interrupt. The other aspect to look at is like the Nets history.
yeah.
For the Nets, like they came from the ABA and they had Dr. J, they had Julius Irving, but they had the version of Julius Irving in the ABA mostly, and his NBA relevancy was with the Sixers.
Yeah.
Um, they had Drazen Petrovic, who unfortunately died in an accident.
Yep.
And after that, you really have to look very closely to see where the next legends are. There are some guys that the Nets organization speaks very fondly of, like Buck Williams.
Uh-huh.
Um, but those are guys that nobody in NBA society really talks about.
Yep.
So then, after Petrovic and Dr. J, and that was one in the 70s, one in the early 90s, you really have to scrub to find players outside of our era to really value. And after those two, it really was Jason Kidd and Vince Carter were
Yep.
like the next. Like, there's a genuine part of me that thought that Richard Jefferson could get his. Who he made zero All Star teams,
Yeah.
but in terms of quality players, the Nets just never really had a ton of them.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, okay, out of like every player who's played in the net since I was a fan of them, right? It's those three.
It really was like,
And that's
and
including like today.
yeah, It- and it, for Sean and I, it's a little bit nostalgic because it was our childhood.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then when you flash forward and you see, well, Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant all played there, is like, yeah, but they didn't have the same passion for it. The
Those
team
names
changed
mean nothing.
location, the play style changed, like everything that like you could hold on to that you could with Vince Carter. None of it existed on the team with newer guys. Joe Johnson, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, any of these guys, they were either there not long enough, they didn't care enough.
Mm-hmm.
But like there was a genuine sense of like those three guys really wanted it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And they fought so hard for it until basically the organization said, "Look, it's not happening. Like we've tried for too long. You guys are all like up for contracts and we can't pay all of you. And then kid went to Dallas. Vince stayed around for another season. He went to, I think, Orlando.
Yeah.
Richard went to Milwaukee. And then Nets basketball was in free fall after that for a very long time.
I mean, I would still consider it basically not recovered from that free fall.
Well, it was different. Those last years in New Jersey, they like were legitimately going up against history for like teams
Yeah.
that hadn't to start a season without a win. They think they went like 19 straight games without a win to start a season.
Yeah.
Like it was real bad.
Yeah.
And they weren't doing anything good with the picks that they got for those guys either.
Nope. That's
Because
the
they
thing.
flipped
Like
them for
the
Darren
New
Williams.
Jersey Nets front office, I feel like with like draft capital was never there.
Right. And you know, part of it I think was kind of the crux with bringing Vince in was I mean, they probably didn't have great draft picks anyway in that era, but that was kind of how ownership worked back then was they weren't spending money on free agents, but as soon as they saw an opportunity to flip those picks instead of having to use them to try to draft guys,
Yep.
they flipped them. If it wasn't Vince, it was Darren Williams.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't Darren Williams, it was Devin Harris.
Yep.
It was a lot of guys who didn't work out very well long term. But the internet speaks loudly. In the '90s, kids are on the internet in full volume, and whether it was Toronto or wherever, everybody loved Vince.
Yeah. So yeah, he can. I'm okay with retiring his number because again, there's only like Kid and Vince Carter really.
He would never become a coach, but I would love to see. I'm so glad that he's back as a commentator
Mhm.
because I think that there's his genuine love for the game. He obviously stayed as a player until his body couldn't do it.
Literally, basically gave out.
I think he just loves the game in a way that a lot of people don't.
Fair. All right, on to the NHL. We have another basically trade deadline approaching. It's still a ways away,
This
but
one's like a month away, yeah.
we've had some things happen. We'll say.
Yeah, I mean, the first one was Carolina is going for it again.
That's one way to put
So
it.
they got rid of Jack Drury and Martin, is it Neckis?
Neckus, basically.
And a bunch of picks.
Mm-hmm.
They brought in Taylor Hall from Chicago. They brought in Mikko Rantanen from Colorado.
Yes.
McKinnon was not happy that Rantanen was traded.
I don't think a lot of Colorado fans were, regardless
But
of being on the team or not.
what do we make of this? Because
I mean, hey, Carolina's going for broke. Sucks for us because we're both in the Metro.
but
I mean,
is
I don't.
Carolina capable of getting anything out of these guys?
I mean, since it's been a while since Taylor Hall really needs like the supporting pieces in order to, really like contribute a lot. And does Carolina have those supporting pieces? Probably. Can he like integrate with them quickly enough? We'll see.
I guess my question is has the system changed enough for a guy for Rantanen and Hall to succeed? Because they played historically in the
I mean,
past
I
few years a
think,
very Islanders like system.
but they have the talent to back it up.
Okay.
I mean, I just think the Islanders play the worst version of the Islanders like system. So
That's fair. That's very fair. I'm just saying defensive based systems can have all the star talents in the world, they tend to break more than they work when you bring in offensive firepower to supplement it because
See, but I don't think like Hall is not direct offensive firepower. He's definitely more of the
Rantanen is.
Yeah, Rantanen is definitely. But
Taylor
like
Hall is not. I don't see him having a lasting impact here.
no.
I say that with all love. I think his injury history is eventually going to come back around.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think you give like the problem with the Carolina system, it's like this few chances they get, like you're kind of hoping the right players are on the ice because they're very defensive minded. I do think in like the past like seasons they've gotten a little bit better on pressing offense a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you asked me this like 2-3 years ago, do I think they would have made an impact? No, but like at least they have a chance now.
They don't have a very high goal differential.
No, definitely not. But like I'm pretty sure like a couple of years ago it was literally non-existent.
Correct, but 26 is not very high either.
Yeah, but like I mean, it just shows that like okay, maybe there is actually room for them to have an impact because that means that they're at least getting chances and like because you have to look at their goal differential as like okay, they've converted a good amount of chances, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means that there's probably a good number that they didn't convert. And could Rantanen be the difference maker in those? A few of them, sure.
Yep. Well, we'll see. I don't know. I think that they were due to acquire some offense. I think you have to let offensive players focus on their strengths, though.
Yeah.
That's yet to be seen if that will work
hmm
in Carolina.
Yeah. 100%.
Um, let's move on to one of the more confusing trades. Because the Rangers are the third worst team in the Metro.
And that's saying
They
something.
are in no real position to make even the wild card. Um, but yet they went out and they got JT Miller back, who they had once drafted.
Yeah, I mean,
They they gave up a conditional first for this trade.
yeah. I mean, do we know what the condition is?
Um,
I'm sure it's out there, but like
yeah, I gotta find it.
it's like okay, what does this do for the Rangers? Oh, it makes them definitely miss the playoffs to barely miss the playoffs. Is that what like because in my mind like okay, they're bottom 3 of Metro. They weren't really, trending any direction. And like okay, maybe JT Miller like he doesn't make that much of an impact where they start and go on like a 10-game tear, does he? I don't think so.
Top 13 protected pick if
Yeah, I mean
they
there's a high chance that they'll be top 13 this year. I'm not gonna lie, because I still don't think they make the playoffs.
so it'll essentially be a 2026 first round pick.
Yeah, because like this year, I still don't think they make the playoffs. Like, okay, before this trade, they definitely didn't make the playoffs. With this trade, like they're a fringe team, maybe they're 13th overall. Like, okay, what do you think?
I mean, I don't know what the hell the Rangers are doing, man.
Yeah,
They seemingly are in that no man's land of like they have enough talent to be a winner,
oh
but
yeah,
they just are so far gone right now
they have what they
that
consider the best goalie in hockey, and we know goalies win regular season to get to the playoffs, but this ain't even happening.
but they also have Panarin
Yeah,
still. They have plenty of offense. I guess getting JT Miller could spark a
I
run,
mean
but it's kind of too little, too late.
they also are notorious at ruining draft prospects.
They are,
Because like Kako
and they traded
Lafreniere,
away. Yeah, yeah.
it just keeps
Yeah.
going.
We talked about in our pre-episode outlining that Jimmy Vesey wasn't a draft pick, but for all the hype he had, they really ran him into the ground.
Yeah.
And then they still brought him back, just like JT Miller. I don't understand what they're doing. It's not a James Dolan thing. As much as I like to think that any New York sports blunder is a James Dolan thing, there's just no fucking way that his hands are on the pulse of the Rangers like this.
Yep.
And then Marcus Pettersson got traded.
Oh yeah.
He went to Vancouver. I think that was a conditional first going back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I mean, I
Danton
think that's
Heinen
fine.
going back to the Penguins. Yeah, this was a move that needed to be made for both sides.
Mhm. I would agree.
As a Penguins fan, I'm just happy to see that they're actually trying to get picks now.
They've
And
finally given up.
to get a conditional first for Marcus Pettersson, and then I guess Pettersson signed a 6-year, 5.5 deal
Yeah.
after that. So that was money that wasn't going to be spent here. So
Definitely. All right. Yeah. I mean, I really think like out of craziness, NBA wins the craziness and the trades going on right now just because of that one. But we still those
stay
NHL
tuned. You got
trades.
plenty of time.
Yeah. That.
I think what the NHL is going for right now is the trades don't make a lot of fucking sense.
Yeah. I mean, like Rotten and Hall
But it's
for.
on such a smaller scale.
Yeah. Definitely.
But what we have in common is the fact that star players are really fucking upset with some of these trades.
Yeah. All right. On to the MLB. Let's talk Dodgers for a little bit.
Yes, and this is on the heels of Rob Manfred saying that no, we don't have a Dodgers problem. So, um, let's take a look into the Dodgers offseason here and see exactly why they're um in our episode here. So,
Let's just
let's
count the
see.
amount of money they spent, basically.
Yeah, so as if winning the World Series wasn't enough, they signed Kirby Yates to be their closer. You know how you sign your closer for a $14 million deal.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to find like the actual payroll that they signed. Uh,
I mean, let's just get to the point. Like, also, they spent a lot of money, and I mean, it's the off season, right? There's basically two months till things get rolling.
uh, no, pitchers and catchers report in like 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm talking about like spring training's in like a month and some.
It's like 2 weeks from now.
Oh. Pitchers and catchers report in 2 weeks, but like there's also the
Yeah.
rest, and then okay.
All right. So let's see here. We have Blake. Let's start in November. Let's do this. So let's start after Tyler Glasnow was taken off the injury list for the 8 millionth time.
Yeah.
So Kershaw's a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
And still is not signed. Ironically, the one person they haven't signed.
The one person they actually need
They
to sign.
re-signed Tommy Edman, who they had traded for a 5-year deal on November 29th. On November 30th, they signed Blake Snell to a 5-year contract.
Mm-hmm.
December 10th, they signed Michael Conforto to a 1-year deal.
Okay.
December 10th, they signed Blake Trinan, another relief pitcher, to a 2-year deal.
Okay.
All right. All well and good. Nothing wrong there. Teoscar Hernandez is a free agent. He re-ups on a 3-year deal.
Okay.
Keep in mind, I'm not saying anything about dollars right
Yeah.
now. Evan Phillips is signed to avoid arbitration. Roki Sasaki, one of the highly sought after free agents internationally, he signs with the Dodgers.
Yep.
I don't know why Trevor Bauer is on the transaction log here. He hasn't played on the Dodgers in years. Kirby Yates signs his 1-year, $14 million closer deal.
Okay.
So as if they haven't acquired enough.
Mm-hmm.
The dollar amount, that's where things get interesting.
Yeah.
And I have to find that. But as I do that, why don't you give me your takes?
I mean, okay, like you just paid your closer $14 million. Like, what is he gonna show up in 30 games? So that's like $500,000 per appearance. Uh, I mean, like, okay, some of them don't sound that egregious, right? But at the same time, just the sheer amount of transactions they've made is kind of ridiculous. And like, sometimes it's like, does the MLB need like a hard cap? Because
Um,
they still operate basically on luxury tax.
yeah, but like the thing with the MLB, and we've talked about this before, is floor and ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
If I think that a lot of big spender teams would be more likely to be okay with a floor. Um, what I've discussed with other friends is for smaller market teams, that doesn't change the level of free agent that you acquire.
Right.
It just brings everybody's value up.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory, you could say, well, the Dodgers aren't going to spend 700 million on every free agent. Well, the past two off seasons kind of show you that they
They
will.
will, yeah,
So teams like the Dodgers, Yankees, they'll continue to get the top tier free agents,
because they can spend the
and
money.
teams like the Athletics, White Sox, or not White Sox, they're in Chicago. Marlins, stuff like that, in smaller markets, like they will continue to get the same like D grade free agents, but they'll have to pay more for it.
Yeah.
So nothing changes there. The thing about salary cap is as we've said before, it's a very traditionalist game. I don't know how the revenue sharing works with the MLB, but as I think I was telling one of my friends, until all the regional sports networks and the independently negotiated TV contracts with all these different teams ceases to exist, the market that they're in weighs a lot more heavier.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you can't pull revenue from stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
then uh, it's harder to justify spending large amounts of money, especially
Yep.
because baseball stadiums don't have huge seating capacities compared to like NFL. Um,
I mean, that's just
or
due to how like the baseball stadium itself is shaped. Like they really only have like the two sides
but
as the main seating.
I think that a cap is so hard at this point to implement. I think that
Yeah, yeah, but like I don't really
it's
think
too
a
far gone.
floor does anything good.
The owners of the big market teams will never be like, yeah, let's make like I've had enough advantages. Let me give the little guys a little
Yeah.
bit more room to. Because is it better for the good of the game for everybody to play with the same resources? Yeah,
But I mean,
probably.
like, also, like, do they need, okay, can the luxury tax exist? Can they still have a soft cap? Sure, but, like, make some arbitrary number the hard cap. Like, I'm not saying, like, go straight from soft cap to full hard cap, right? I'm just saying, like, man, even I'm looking at it, and, like, there has to be a number out there that's, like, just so high it's excessive.
Yeah, and the scary thing right now is if you're an NL team, and we said this to each other a few days ago, is um, not really sure how the Dodgers aren't set up to just run the NL for a long time because they've now assembled such depth that their top prospects in Double A, Triple A,
They're not
they're
coming up.
essentially they're blocked from coming up. And if any other team wants that talent, well, they can have it, but for a price.
Yeah.
And so basically what the Dodgers have done here is they've created a system where no matter what move they make, they're ready for the next layer. And unless they're mortgaging their long-term future, which is hard to see that they won't continue to sell out and make so much money that they'll be able to do this again 15 years from now. Really don't know what they're losing.
Yeah.
Like, they may not win World Series, but they'll be right there for a very long time.
Definitely. But I mean, I still think like every time, okay, like Yankees fan here, but like still every time I see them spend outrageous amounts of money, I'm like, okay, like that just means when like we play like the Marlins, even the Pirates or whatever, it's like, why
A
am I gonna
man
watch?
has to. It's one of those, a man has to have a code kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, um, just because there's nothing stopping you from doing something doesn't mean that like you should just go batshit crazy doing it.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's why I'm
at
like
the end of
saying
the day,
also.
you're one team in a league that needs the league overall to succeed.
Uh-huh.
Because if one team goes too far off the deep end with this, then it's kind of like, well, ratings could go down
Yeah, because like
overall for the MLB, viewership, interest, because it's kind of like everything
I
is now
mean,
just assumed.
there's also 162 games per team in the season, right? And I'm like, I don't watch more than 50% of them.
The more hope you take away from those fan bases, the more you're ruining the game.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see what they do. But again, like I'm definitely of the opinion, like even if you keep the soft cap, you definitely need like there has to be some excessive number that you can just put like, okay, just don't go above here. All
I'm
right.
getting tired of the Dodgers.
Yeah. On to the last topic, and it's just before the Super Bowl. So why don't we talk about games from 2 weeks ago?
Sure. I mean, I
Well,
think it,
one game
like,
from 2 weeks ago.
well, yeah, the ref show seemingly like, and it's hard not to argue that there's a ref show going on, especially
Yeah.
with how badly they've botched it this week.
Yeah, that was a
Um,
little bad.
so I mean, all season long, you could find the Chiefs being the benefactor of flags or lack thereof.
Yeah, but like
Um,
I really feel like last game was especially egregious, but they had also the most amount of eyes on them. Because
the
like
Bills Chiefs is always a big draw.
but also like okay, if you looked at a regular season game, like okay, you probably could be like, like some of the plays you'd be like, that's a little questionable, but like sure. I didn't really see something like if I was watching a Chiefs game, which guaranteed I didn't watch many Chiefs games to be honest. But like I didn't see anything so outrageously egregious or something so questionable that I was like these refs have to be like paid under the table or something.
But it's interesting at the same time that this game, there were a number of times where things didn't make sense.
Yep.
Late hit out of bounds where Mahomes was like still inbounds when he was hit.
Yeah.
Um, Fourth and ones where you could see the ball very clearly was over the marker.
But not
Not
ruled that way and then
it all kind of it's one thing when it's like it creates a game that goes down to the wire. Cool. And not to take anything away from the Chiefs in the sense that in the big moment when they had to get the defensive stop, they did.
mm-hmm.
But it really felt like,
They were handed that defensive stop opportunity on a silver
yeah,
platter.
yeah.
Like everything to get there was kind of handed, but doing it was that. Okay, yes, I can agree with that too.
Yeah, and you really want to believe that the Bills and uh, the Bills had a great year. I still think that their receiving core needs an overhaul compared to when they had Diggs, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't really have a clear cut number one right now. Um, and there's work to do for sure. But the fact that they still got to the championship game with that, and the fact that they were controlling the game the way that they wanted to until it was basically taken from them. Yeah, I don't know. As a
Yeah,
Steelers
so
fan in the same conference, I still like Josh Allen plays the game with a passion and tenacity that you really appreciate.
mhm.
You not just to stop seeing the Chiefs, but eventually, like you'd like to see him get one. But the fact that we now go to Super Bowl Media Week and we have Roger Goodell and a committee of referees putting out press releases and statements saying that there's been no efforts to intentionally change the outcome of games in favor of the Chiefs.
Yeah, but this is basically,
Well,
hold on. This is basically, we've investigated ourselves and we've found we've done nothing wrong.
it's also, I learned this as a teenager. If you feel like you've done nothing wrong, then who do you feel like you need to answer to? So if you go up to somebody who wasn't suspecting you of doing something wrong and say, I know I hit this person, but, or I know this person is going to come to you and say, I think that this person hit me, and so I'm going to get in front of it and I'm going to say, I didn't hit this person. Well, why would I suspect you of hitting this person? Now you kind of look a little bit guilty because you came out of the woodworks and said
But I
something
mean,
when nobody forced you to.
so many people, okay, like, I really think public perception kind of forced them to make a statement, though. Because, like,
Yes, but they've never answered to public perception before. Why would they do it now?
yeah, but they're, like, I mean, they're also afraid
Think
of
about the
ratings and stuff,
Patriots
too.
dynasty. You don't think that there were calls going that way for
Not
years?
It was not as big as this, I feel like, because even like people who don't watch
You're watching
sports.
different games than I was in those AFC Championship games then.
Yeah, but like I'm talking to people who like don't watch sports and stuff, and they're even talking about this. And during that time, like, okay, I heard it, and okay, I was following that a lot because I'm a Giants fan, right? But like nobody outside of people following the NFL would say anything because you have basically Taylor Swift and all these fans of her also following the damn game. You got so many random people also paying attention.
I will say they've done a better job of phasing out how often they talk about her.
Yes. Yes.
Thank God for that. But
I mean,
like,
okay, that's why I didn't watch many Chiefs games at the beginning of the season. Like, it was way too often.
but I think that at this point it's like, I think I can see this two different ways in terms of the refs. I can see this going very well for Philly
Mm-hmm.
into the Super Bowl because the refs now feel pinned against the wall, being like, seriously, I didn't mean to make it look like we're advantageous to Kansas City, and like maybe a couple calls get ignored. The other thing is the refs could say, all right, we've made this statement. Now I'm going to show you what I think a fair game is. And Kansas City gets even more because, as far as the refs are concerned, okay, I wiped my hands of it. Like, I said we weren't doing it. So now I can say, again, we didn't do it.
Yep.
But it'll be interesting. The Chiefs all year
Mm-hmm.
have played down to very mediocre teams.
Yes,
And
100%.
they statistically, like, if you look, it would pop up on my Twitter timeline every now and then. There are guys who will say, here's what the standings would be on the opposite side of a one-score game. And
Mm-hmm.
the Chiefs' record would have been like,
It's
instead of being the 1 seed, they would have been like the 6 seed. Um, they still have made the playoffs. So I guess, knowing what the Chiefs do in the playoffs, you could still make an argument that they get here
Yeah.
because the roster is the same. But like, they've been the beneficiary of something throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really need much more hand holding, especially after back-to-back championships.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so now you have the Chiefs as the combination of the average NFL fan, you and me, anybody on Twitter, stuff like that, kind of getting tired of seeing the same team.
Oh, yeah.
And
I
so
mean,
we
I
were
think
all rooting for the Bills.
this also happened during the Patriots, like, thing. Like, everybody was just tired of seeing them.
And it doesn't help that on the NFC side of things, like, it's the Eagles have been right there for a very long time. And I was finding myself obviously rooting for the Lions, but the Commanders having an outside shot at it too is like, well, why wouldn't I root for them? The
Mm-hmm.
Eagles were just here 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was like between the Eagles and the 49ers, it's kind of like seeing the same three teams over and over in the same game. It's getting a little stale and kind of hoping that whether it be Travis Kelsey rides off into the sunset, whatever it's going to take for like some serious retooling, but like Kansas City drafts insanely well. So you're kind of just hoping that this three-peat gets stopped.
Yeah.
But it
But
seems
also
like if
not.
it's not
Like,
the refs, if it's not the talent, there's just so
yeah.
much in the way of Kansas City losing.
Yeah. So, we'll see. But yeah, like, there's been a lot of talk, so,
Who do you think would win?
I mean, to be fair, like, I told you also in our pre-planning that I really wish this game had no winner.
For sure, but talking about the game in itself,
But like I
I
actually think like with all the backlash they're getting, like and even if this whole ref thing wasn't going on, like I actually think Philly has a good shot of stopping the three-peat without all this like other side drama.
I agree with that too, but I think there's certain recipes that work and certain recipes that don't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that Philly has to for sure play ahead
Mm-hmm.
this game, but as I told coworkers, I think what they need to do, and it because Kansas City is so good on both sides of the ball, I think it's very unlikely to happen. But if they could dominate the first half,
Yeah.
like a Falcons 28-3 lead, because hear me out, I'm not saying the Patriots side of that game happens again, but when's the last time that you saw the Chiefs down that many points where they had to get so creative with it that they had to abandon what made them comfortable?
Never.
Especially in the Mahomes era, never. So if we could have Philly put Kansas City in a position they've never had to fight through
Mm-hmm.
in years, I think that's a recipe for success. They
Yeah.
don't do that. I think Philly's defense holds well for the first half, maybe gets a 3 to 8 point lead at halftime. You have to be, I had a coworker say, have to be up 9 points. No, you have to be up 10 plus points in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes left. I think if you
I still
give
don't
a
think.
field, I think two possession game where it's a field goal and a touchdown, that's easy money for Bucker to nail one from 55 and a touchdown. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be up 10 plus
Okay. Well, we'll see.
with 5 minutes left.
All right. Yeah. We'll see. Coming up in on Sunday.
Yeah.
So all right. Well, we got nothing else. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.